Hey friends, and welcome back to the Rewind podcast of Forward Church. Join us each week as we take a look back on Sunday's message and dig a little deeper into the conversations with those who are teaching across our sites at Forward. We want to invite you to be part of the conversation too. So if something we're talking about on Sunday morning sparks a question in you, head to our website, forwardchurch.ca/askus, and submit your questions there. And we're going to do our best to engage with those questions in this space. With that said, let's jump in and get started.
Hey, Rewind Podcast listeners, you're in for a special episode today. This will be our final episode of 2024. I feel like it's like we're doing one of those after-school specials, on a very special episode of the Forward Rewind Podcast.
Daryl, was there such a thing as after-school specials when you were a kid?
Did you ever get a very special episode, like the very special episode of like Fresh Prince? And Carlton got a gun.
Yeah. Yes. I did grow up with those very special episodes. It's like, they're so cringy.
So this will be less. We're going to work on this being less cringy. What we want to talk about is we want to look at the year in review. I think one of the gifts of this year, of the end of the year, is not just the top 10 list that everybody else puts out, but actually time to sit back and to reflect and to take stock of what God has done over the past year in our lives, in the life of the church. So I'm here with Pastor Daryl and Pastor Kirk, and we're going to talk about some things, but I want to start out with, this is our icebreaker to start today, is for you personally. What did God teach you in 2024? A lesson that you felt like God was...
Only one, huh?
You're only allowed one. God can only teach you one thing. You're not allowed to learn more than one thing a year. So that's it.
Is it transferable? Can you take that lesson into the new year?
Or
does it stay in 2024?
It comes to an end on December 31st.
No rollover.
And that includes skills. So if your thing is like woodworking, God taught me woodworking. That's it. That's all you get.
Remember roll over hours with your cell phone plan?
Yeah.
That's not a thing anymore, is it? It can't be.
No, and for any staff, roll over vacation time, also not a thing.
That's right, not a
thing.
In that case, I'll see you guys next podcast.
All right, who wants to start us off? Something that God was teaching you, and you can do more, but let's try and keep it focused.
Okay, so here is probably the one big thing. This is a great question because we actually had this conversation with our elders about a year ago where we talked about how has God been growing you over the past year. And I remember one of the elders turning it back on me and going, well, Kirk, how has God been growing you? And it's a great question because I think as pastors, we're often asking our congregation, what's God doing in your life? How, follow Jesus, let God shape your life. And it's great for us as leaders to reflect on what's God doing in our life. So for me, the big thing has been, I think God's really been growing in a good, healthy way, my faith over the past year. Not in the sense of everything turning out the way that I want it to be. Because there have been and continue to be a lot of challenging circumstances personally and in the church. And so... it's not that everything turns out the way that I want it to be, but what I'm seeing is a greater level of peace in my heart because my faith has grown in the sense of my confidence in God being both sovereign and good at the same time. And so it just allows me a place of deep surrender and peace inside to go, yeah, you know what? What I want it to be doesn't really necessarily matter. It's really what does God want it to be.
That's great. Daryl.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing God's been teaching me this past year is the need for community. I think that's the central theme that just keeps on coming back, and I deeply appreciate and love spending time with people, but just my own wiring is I'm okay being by myself. My wiring, and Derek, I think you've kind of mentioned this before, that's
Yep.
kind of similar to your wiring.
Sure.
Like I kind of need like one friend, and that's Steph, and that's kind of, we're we're good. And yet over this past year, realizing, that's my wiring, but not necessarily what I actually need. And then several times, God's really just shown me over and over again the importance for community in my own life, and in the spiritual life of the church as well, and just seeing how incredibly important that is. That it's been my prayer over the past 6 months at the church, is that deep friendships have been formed, would be formed, and I know where we're going to go next in the podcast, so I don't want to talk too much, but this past weekend had several conversations, people just coming up to me saying, hey, I'm hanging out with so-and-so this weekend. I'm like, I didn't even know that you knew who that person was, and you invited them not only over, but like for Christmas dinner. And seeing that happen, huge answer to prayer, and it's something I continue to pray that God is doing in His church.
Okay. Mine is God's continued to grow in me empathy over the last year, and really kind of continuing to grapple with the reality. So I grew up with a bit of a bent that reasons and excuses are the same thing. That if you say this is why I do it, you're really trying to excuse what you did. And so it's been a long journey of me figuring out that reasons are not excuses. So you have to own a behavior. You have to own the reality of what you've done. But that reasons matter. That there's stories behind why people do what they do, and to see people through the eyes of Jesus means looking on people with compassion and understanding that there are harms that have been caused there that often replicate themselves out in the relationships that those people have with other people. And it doesn't excuse the harm that they may have done to somebody else, but if we're ever going to get them to a place of wholeness and healing, we have to dig down and get to the reason and begin to bring some healing there. So that's been a big one for me in just dealing with individual people in my life. All right, Daryl, I prepared both you and Kirk for the fact that we're going to do some highlights. So I've asked each of us to kind of bring 5 highlights from last year, but I say Daryl first because I said to Kirk before we went on the air, we're going to do this as a draft style. Now, I'm not entirely sure that you understand what a draft is, so I just want to... I just want to confirm you are aware of what a draft is.
I know. Hey, I know sports things. I'm a cultured man who knows these words. I have heard them before. Last
With
night,
all of your fantasy teams that you play, right?
Last night, my father-in-law, he's over and he's watching some football highlights, and so Parker's there. He's never seen football before. He's fascinated by this. And then Steph comes over and starts explaining the game. And I'm like, I have no idea what any of this means, so thanks for explaining that to me. So anyways.
You do understand the concept of a draft.
So pretend that I don't know what this means.
Okay, so...
And in this context, what does this mean for us?
Well, I'm going to set up the draft. I'm going to allow you to go first, so you'll get the first pick. You get to go and give your reason first. Then we're going to go over to Kirk, allow him to give his item that he wants to reflect on, a highlight that he wants to bring forward, or a story, and then me, and then we'll come back around to you, and we'll go through our picks that way. Now, if you end
Are we
up
doing
with
this in any particular order?
But this means if someone...
Yes, Daryl's going first.
No, what I mean is of the top 5.
Well, listen, here's what I would suggest to you, given that we're going to do a draft style. You are best going with the things that you think someone else might pick first, so you're not scrambling.
Okay.
Oh,
this is see? See, so now you got to think through. There's a little strategy here.
So if Kirk says something, I can't say the same thing.
Correct.
That makes a boring podcast.
You got to come up with you can't just say ditto. That is not okay.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, okay. All right, I'm with you.
Okay.
The player got chosen.
Because I am setting the rules, I am putting myself last, so I am at greatest risk of running into issues.
Wow, what a servant you are.
Sacrificial right here. So Daryl,
Hold on. I think Derek set this up, though. I think Derek couldn't actually come up with only 5, so he's got like 35 things down.
there's lots of things I could write. So I do not have 35 things down.
All right. Well, you see, I wrote down 1, and I'm like, this encompasses all the whole thing, so I could just do that.
Oh, brother, you can't wish for more wishes.
yeah.
This is not that type of thing. So if your first thing is Jesus or the Bible, this is not going to go well. You're starting us, though, Daryl. Highlight number 1 from 2024.
Okay. All right. Going to come in strong. Going to say a highlight from this past year was baptisms.
Baptisms, like all baptisms everywhere across all sites.
Yeah. I can claim baptisms. How specific does this have to be, Derek? Wait. So by that logic, we each can say a baptism.
Do you want to give maybe a story? No, but maybe you want to share a little bit more about why you chose baptism. Was there a specific thing that stood out?
No, I'm good with that explanation. No, okay. So this at Easter we had baptisms, and really, really exciting. We had 2 people scheduled to get baptized. Mason and Odyssey, super excited about how God's just been at work in their lives. Just a really cool couple. Really, really appreciate them. And as we're leading up to Easter, and we don't typically do this at Forward. Kitchener is just logistics and everything, but I actually brought them in to record their testimony. And so we did that in studio, and they did a great job recording all of that. And it was all really well prepared. And then a few days before Easter, I was talking with Kirk. I'm like, I think we should do spontaneous baptisms. Let's just open this up. And so we got all the supplies. There's a lot of logistics behind the scenes to make this happen. And we put it out there. And one guy, David, he came forward to get baptized. And his parents were there. And they were just so excited for him to take this step. And that was just so incredibly exciting to see that happen. Because David, I don't know if he would have come up if it wasn't spontaneous. Right. I just saw God working in his life right there, and a huge highlight of the year. Really appreciate what God's been doing in his life and the lives of those who took that step this year.
Awesome.
We had, I don't know if you know this or not, we had 54 baptisms over the course of 2024 in the life of our church as a whole.
Yep.
Which is so incredible and encouraging. Yeah.
Yep. Really cool.
All right.
You get to go next, Kirk.
My first round draft pick.
Yeah.
All right. Celebration Sunday. 90 years as a church, and just to be able to see the church come together from all of our locations to celebrate the faithfulness of God over those years. We had a number of staff from the past who came back on that Sunday, and we had a breakfast that we served for all the former staff of the church, and it was just such a great, rich time watching them connect with each other and tell stories from the past, and to really understand the kind of legacy that has been built over the years in the life of Forward, and that we've inherited as people who are part of the church today because of the faithfulness of God and the faithfulness of those people over the past. And I really enjoyed that Sunday and the celebrations and being able to see everybody together worshiping the Lord, praising and reflecting on the last 90 years. It was just a great day. Okay. And a good pivot with the rain too. We had lots of cake, moved it inside. It was great.
I will let you know that you two have knocked off 2 of my top 5. So I'll be adjusting on the fly, but my number 2 on my list was launching and preparing to launch 2 new sites. So, and it's the whole process of the whole thing, from thinking back to where we were in January and the elders board coming together and really seeking the Lord's face as to whether we were supposed to do any of this. And God kind of just in a multitude of ways, with people stepping forward saying, no, I want you to do both of these. And then the whirlwind of having Khalil and Julia and the boys show up in March. Well, I was going to be away, and
that was fun.
How he's provided and all of that. I thought I was going to come home to people living in my house. It was wild.
It was a little chaotic.
It was very chaotic.
Yep.
Then even just this fall being in as we were getting a trailer prepped and ready for the Brant County team, watching them work, and it's like the exact style of trailer that I was into and out of for many, many years, rolling carts off of. There was a lot of nostalgia that came upon me as I was looking at those carts, and also a soreness in my back that came up again. So all of that, we're kind of in the process right now, in the middle of all of this. I'm looking forward to coming back this time next year and see how God has worked in both our Arabic site and in this Brant County site. But just the process of seeing God at work. And when Kirk and I had first talked, we had talked about church planning. It was in the strategic plan, but I think we're like a year and a half to 2 years closer.
Yeah, it was.
Then we would have probably
way
planned
faster than
given
we were expecting.
a bunch of other things that we've got going on at the church right now.
Yeah.
But when God says go, you go. So can't wait to see what God does in the years ahead. Okay, we're back around to Daryl. You get to take your second draft pick here.
All right, perfect. So far, my top 5 is still intact. So,
including like you went off the board for your own pick, or what's going on?
No. I mean,
Okay.
number 1. Okay, so I'm just going to go on to number 2.
Okay.
I'm going to say one of my top 5 is Forward Kitchener sending out. We sent, I think, 2 people on the church's mission trip this year.
Yeah.
And that was really exciting. Jen and Jamie went down to Nicaragua, and I know that was a really important trip in their lives. And I would say this was important just in the life of Kitchener. We've been around for 12 years, and and Derek, you'll be able to speak more directly into this. I don't know how often we have done this as a site of sending people on trips, and certainly since I've been here, that's the first time, and just really, really exciting of people taking that step, and already have had a few people come up to me saying that they are interested in going the next time a trip comes up, and I think they're inspired by the stories that Jen and Jamie have been able to share.
Yeah, no, we have done it before, but I think it's great to have a trip where we have all of our people, representation from all of our sites going, and because we support these missionaries and missions together, and so to have a shared view and ownership of it is so good.
Yeah.
So am I allowed to, this is where the draft rules come into play.
Yeah.
Am I allowed to like do an offshoot of a...
Yeah, you can. I think we're going to have some offshoots here, so I'm okay with that.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I appreciate your...
Are you going back to the 90th anniversary celebration
No,
again?
I am
doing
not.
an offshoot of that?
I want to do an offshoot of what you were talking about with the church planning thing.
Okay, sure. Yep.
So for me, the great joy in the church planting thing, the great pain in the church planting thing is that it is 2 years sooner than what we were originally planning to do. But the great joy in the church planting comes from the fact that I live in Paris, and I've lived in Paris for 30 years now. I was reflecting on a couple of significant milestones in planting Forward Brant this year. The first one was the elders meeting, where we had Andrew come and present to the elders the plan and the vision around planting Forward Brant. And I remember the elders waiting until the end of the meeting to make a decision on, are we going to go with this or not? Because planting 2 churches at the same time seems like a terrible idea on the surface. And
that's why we've done it twice now.
Right. So, as someone who lives in Paris and who has prayed over my community many times, to be in that room when the elders said, let's do this, was one of the most deeply meaningful moments of my life. I genuinely mean that. I believe so much in this church and what God is doing in this church. And I believe that what God is doing in this church is the kind of thing that the community I've lived in for 30 years needs. and I am just I was so moved, and I was so grateful for the elders to say yes to this, and then to go to the very first pop-up service in the summer in Paris, and just to be there and to see the group of people that came together to worship the Lord. It was something that really, it felt like decades in the making for me, and I was so grateful to see it.
Well, it is an answer to years and years of prayer for you. I know that, right? So, and I can confirm you got emotional in the room when that decision was made, and it was unanimous with the elders saying, "Yeah, well, I think God's calling us to do this."
Yeah.
So that was really cool. I'm surprised Kirk didn't say this one, so I feel like I'm kind of stealing a draft pick here. But to see our first crew of leadership school graduate, that's an offshoot of 90th anniversary, because that's when we recognized them. But now we're on the fourth cohort in, and it's been so neat. Kirk does a lot of the heavy lifting on this. I just get to come in once or twice a year and do some teaching, but just to watch God moving in the lives of these cohorts, and to see people make 3-year commitments to just grow in their own personal relationship with Jesus and grow as leaders in the church, and now to see some of those leaders over these years begin to step into leadership positions, and it's part of why we can do something like prepare to launch new sites, is because we've got leaders in the pipeline who are growing and taking on additional ministry responsibility, and it's just been really, and then to see Kitchener people involved and Cambridge people involved, trust, Lord willing, we're going to have Arabic, and
we do now. We, in our fourth cohort, we have a representation from our Arabic.
That's right.
Site.
We do, and I'm trying to think whether do we have anybody who's going over to Brant who's
Not yet.
in there yet?
Not yet. Not yet.
Some of those people I know will be in there in the future.
They will
we got some great leaders going over there. So that has been so neat to see kind of grow and then come to fruition over these last 4 years. Daryl, third.
All right, third pick. Okay, I know you tease me about not knowing about draft picks, but I do listen to podcasts where this happened, and I know how to win. So you make it broad, you make it broad enough that obviously you win. So my next pick is gonna be people stepping up to serve.
Okay.
That's
wow.
My pick. Yeah.
People stepping up.
Starts with baptism.
And I'm also going to claim, like I said, that's how you win these things. Make it broad enough, but I can narrow it down.
I was going to say, I don't think you can go to the podium in the NFL draft and say, I select the Alabama Crimson Tide. You actually have to pick a player on the team.
I'm just going to say it. I want to see someone try. Okay. So with that, I was thinking about the best things I've seen this year. And one of the biggest ones was just seeing people step up to serve in leadership in so many different roles. And so I'll give a couple examples. So one is having 2 new guys step onto the elder team specific for Kitchener. We've had Gord for the past few years, and he has served faithfully, but one of the conversations that's come up time and time again with Gord is one elder for an entire site. Focus specifically on the needs of what's happening in Kitchener, and want to give him support. And so very thankful for Josh and for Steve stepping up into that role. But again, this is a story that keeps on happening of needs in the church and people stepping up into it to serve in really incredible ways. So give one more example. So this summer we had someone lined up to be a leader for our youth ministry. And unfortunately, right at the very end of summer, he wasn't able to make that commitment work. And so we had a couple weeks where we weren't sure if and how youth ministry was going to happen at Kitchener. And right at that same time, I had a conversation with a young lady. Her name's Prayer. And we were just talking at an event at the church. I just asked her how her summer's been going, what's her plans for the fall. And she just told me, I visited Kitchener the other day, and I'm just really looking for a place where I can serve in a significant way this year. And the next day, I heard that this person who was supposed to serve in youth ministry couldn't make the commitment work. And right after that, I'm like, I wonder if there's something happening here. I wonder if prayer could step up into this role. And so I reached out to her, and we made all the arrangements. And thankfully, we were actually able to keep to our commitment of when we said the youth ministry was going to launch this fall. We were able to actually stick to that commitment and actually see the youth ministry get going again. And just had a report today of their Christmas party. They had not just double, but I think triple the amount of students they typically have on a Thursday night at that event. And so incredibly thankful of what God is doing in the youth ministry and how he just continues to stir people up and placing them in the right spot at the right time to take on these really important leadership roles.
Third round draft pick for you, Kirk.
All right. I'm going to say the women's conference that we hosted earlier in the year. Just to be able to see a team of women from both Kitchener and Cambridge come together to facilitate an event that was open, and we had hundreds of women from our own church and other churches who came to be part of a day together. And the stories that I heard from women who were a part of that event are just so encouraging. Some people we had a few women who were on the stage sharing some of their own testimonies during the event. And I know that they were saying things that, probably was the first time they've been said in public in the way that they did. And it was really impactful in the lives of a number of women in our church family. And to see the growth, not only from that day, but to see the way that God's been working in the lives of women in our church all over the place has been incredibly encouraging. And it kind of is, it's a piece of a overall plan that we have of having one major conference every year that we host and in a bit of a rotation. So we did a marriage one, did a women's one. Guys, your turn's coming in the spring, and we're already working with a couple other churches in the region to be able to bring that together and have a bunch of guys from other churches. So, just watching what God was doing there that day and then beyond the fallout from that in a good way, it was really, really rich to see.
I am going to go back to Nicaragua, but I'm going to talk about what I got to see God doing through Greg and Kate Isaac, and what I also got to see of how the projects that Forward has supported over the last few Christmas offerings that have happened down there have just been an unbelievable blessing for ministry. It was really cool to be on the sports facility there that they have built, and to be able to share the gospel with like 70 young men who were there to play soccer that night. I'm sure they're like, just shut up and let us play soccer. But just to be able to share the good news of Jesus, have those guys tuned in and listening to that and thinking like, this is possible because of the giving of people who gave to the Christmas offering. And then to travel in the truck through some really wild and rugged roads where like it got muddy enough that we were trying to push a big truck out that was stuck in the mud that was trying to take water back into some back road places, but we were there with the truck so we could get through, which means that Greg and Kate, even when it's the rainy season, can get through to get to minister to some of the people who are there. And then when we were there near the dump, having Greg and Kate point out to all of these different homes, hey, that home, that has a new roof because somebody at Forward contributed to get the roof done. Or those kids there, they're supported, and we drop the food off because these people from Forward support that family, and seeing the difference like close up that was making. And this is just in this tiny corner. Most people probably have never even really thought of Nicaragua or been there, and Greg and Kate are just working faithfully, developing relationships, Kate is working with these single moms and moms who are struggling, just investing in their life. Maybe nobody else is noticing, but it's making a tremendous difference in their lives. And Greg's working with these young men week after week, discipling them, training them up, and maybe no one else notices, but it's making a difference there. And that's just kind of symbolic of what goes on in so much international missions that we get to be a part of. Is when you give, you're doing things that are making incredible differences in the lives of people that will echo through eternity. So
Awesome. All right. My fourth pick.
Yep.
So last time I said it's people stepping up to serve.
Yeah.
I'm going to go broad again. People stepping up.
people reading their Bible,
People. No, just people.
somebody praying.
I was going to say people. Just in general. People stepping up to give. So this fall we had a major tech issue. We have two projectors that work together to make one screen at the back of the wall, and one of them completely died on us, and the other one was going to die very...
Teetering.
It was
It's teetering.
on life support. It was on life support. And that Sunday where, and it always happens right at the time of year where we have lots that we are really trying to explain to the overall church with our Christmas offering and different things that are happening in the wintertime. And of course, that's where you want to have all your communication working. We rely on visuals and just nothing was working. And that Sunday when everything stopped working, had a couple in the church come up and let us know that they were anticipating and thinking about one way that they could give, that they could be a blessing, and we worked with them to figure out how to not only fix our projectors, but actually, I think we've done an improvement on a very, thankfully, on an incredible deal that we got, so we could have a TV wall on the back of our stage, and that in and of itself is a huge blessing. That all of this happened right at the time of Black Friday, where we get basically we were able to stretch that what they gave twice as far as if this issue had happened any time of the year. And so incredibly thankful for that. And I point to that's a really big and obvious. It's one of those things where I don't really like to talk about, hey, someone came up and gave a gift, but when it's a giant TV wall behind me, I can't really
ignore it.
And I know if I mentioned any names in this situation, they would literally die / come and kill me in the process. They do not want the credit, and they really just wanted God to receive the glory. And this, I would say, is just a bigger part of a bigger story of this entire past year of people stepping up to give, seeing a need and just taking care of it, responding to the call to give to the church. And this past year, we started taking up a physical offering the first Sunday of each month, and been kind of explaining that at the beginning of each month why we do this. And I kind of have to say each month, I'm like, I get it. Most of you don't give through cash or check anymore. So this is kind of symbolic of just the act of giving as an act of worship, and again, each time of people responding and just incredibly thankful for that. And so I would say that's definitely in my top 5 of people responding to the needs in the church.
Okay.
So I want to piggyback a little bit on what Derek was talking about, what happened in Nicaragua, but then flip it to say the same kind of stuff is happening locally here in our church community.
Yeah.
To see the interaction between all of our ministries and people who are serving in our ministries, where, and there are countless stories that you could tell of people who go to Alpha and then they come out of Alpha, and there's some needs that are made aware of during Alpha. And then there's other people who come alongside of those needs, or discipleship groups over the past year who stepped into realities of, in one case, somebody in the group lost a family member, and just watching the group kind of step into the mess of that and support this family. And thinking about just a story we heard yesterday about people who are involved in our Safe Families ministries who have stepped into a situation to support a family that is in some really significant need right now, and just the way that one of the things I love about Forward is there is not, within our ministries, there's less and less of a silo mentality within our ministries of like, I got to do the thing that's just for my ministry. And there's far more of a, no, we are like all going in the same direction. And we're all trying to grow as disciples of Jesus, and we're all trying to live this out in our life. And so sometimes if that means I get to hand the baton off to somebody else because they're focused on a particular area, I'm great with that. And it's just beautiful to watch the Spirit of God at work in the life of our church community. And I know that's kind of a broad Daryl answer, but it is, there are just a lot of stories that you can tell where God has just broken down kind of that island mentality, and people are living together as different parts of the body, but living together towards the same mission and cause that God's called us to.
Yeah, let me Daryl this a little bit as well. Because one of the things I have here is God drawing people to himself. And I don't know how many conversations I've had with people out in the foyer after a service at one of our locations, talking to them, getting to hear a little bit of their story, first, second, maybe third time here, and hearing how like just God was just moving in their life. They're looking for something, and they just ended up being, and oftentimes it's because somebody who they knew stepped in a moment and invited them and said, hey, why don't you come? And they were just like, that's exactly what I'm looking for. Sometimes literally like, and this is especially true amongst some teenagers, young adults, of like just feeling so, and hopeless maybe isn't the right word, but just so dry. Like, is there anything in this world that can make sense of life and give some purpose to it? And seeing the church, maybe they had interaction with us through a community event or through some of our community programming, and then showing up on Sunday, or they found us online. I mean, I think almost everybody I talk to finds us online at some point and then comes in physically later. But I have just been overwhelmed. I've been in ministry now for 20...
You're not that old.
No.
You should be able to do the math quickly.
22 years. 22 years. And I've never seen this before. Like, this is the first time in my, and beyond that, my time in church, which is from the time I've born, I've never experienced it to this level. And I think we're at the beginning of something, not the end of something.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited about what that means for the future. And I want to just encourage people to step out in boldness and invite somebody.
Yeah.
Reach out, share the gospel. There is a hungry world looking for Jesus, even though they don't know that it's Jesus they're looking for. So have the boldness to step forward and share the gospel and invite somebody.
Okay.
Last pick.
All right. And
this is where winners are made. The end rounds. How is your scouting played out, Daryl?
I've hit all the main points so far.
Filled out the whole roster.
Now he's going to be like, I'm glad for the Holy Spirit.
And now I get to go really specific. So one of my favorite moments this past year actually happened this Sunday. After the service, I had a conversation with at least 3 different people in the church. And I've kind of already mentioned this, but I'll highlight it again. At least 3 different people who just told me that they were inviting different people in the church over into their home this holiday season. Whether it was right after that service or literally like on Christmas Day or at some point in the next 7 days, they're going to be inviting people over to celebrate Christmas with them. And this is just a huge answer to prayer of just desiring that there would be deeper community and really deeper friendship within the church. Of people just really enjoying spending time with each other. And it's kept on being the story after story. And I was already kind of on the lookout, just thinking like, hey, is there anyone that I should invite over during the holidays? And all these people are kind of coming up. I'm like, you're stealing all the people. Who am I going to invite now? Come on, guys. I guess people can get invited twice, so that's okay. But just really, really encouraged to see that happen. And that's my hope moving into 2025 is that we'll continue to develop more of this invite culture of instead of waiting for a program or something to be led from the stage, instead seeing people in the church just taking that on themselves, saying, hey, I'm going to invite that person who maybe doesn't have family in the area and just invite them over and we'll have Christmas together. And really a beautiful thing that happened and excited to see that continue to happen in the church.
Okay, Kirk, last pick here.
All right.
I know there's lots of stuff.
There is lots of stuff. So I'm going to take our leadership summit,
Okay.
but as a microcosm of a bigger story. So our leadership summit, most people in our church don't even know we do a leadership summit. We do one every fall in September. It's a gathering together of people who lead ministries, lead discipleship groups, and just bringing all the leaders in our church together for an evening of encouragement and equipping in different ways. This year was our largest leadership summit that we've had to date. We've had about 140 people there from all of our sites. And that was it was so awesome on so many levels because to me, it really reflected the environment of multiplying that we've been talking about, right? To see more leaders in the space meant that we had to be adding more leaders. And as you develop and cultivate those leaders in different ways, they are then empowered to go out and reach people with the gospel, disciple people. Yeah. And I just know that all the things we've talked about here today are possible in part, first and foremost, because of what God's been doing in the life of our church family. And so I praise him for that. But I also know that people who've been serving, to what Daryl was saying earlier,
Yep.
and people who have stepped into leadership roles all over the life of our church family are the instruments that God is using to accomplish his work in the life of our church and through our church into our community. And it's just been so cool to watch people taking ownership of their ministry areas and growing. And there's just countless stories I could share with that. So many people who are leading in places that they never imagined in a million years that they would be leading in, but God has called them there, and it's very, very encouraging to see.
I will add to that. One of the really cool things was seeing like the intergenerational reality of leaders. Like we had leaders from like their late teens all the way through into their 80s and probably beyond there, across sites, people who are brand new or fairly new to Forward and people who have been here for decades and decades. And it was just so neat to watch them all interacting together.
Yeah.
All right, here it comes. Final pick of the draft. And my pick is using a flannel graph on Sunday.
I see.
What a flashback. Being able to use a flannel graph on stage. Actually, this is more about all of the people in our Sunday mornings who work on things like creative ideas and some of the backgrounds, sermon bumpers, lighting, sound. Like if people knew, we got one of the guys who's really responsible for this running stuff right now. I'm so thankful for Robin, for all of our tech and worship teams, for our frontlines teams, kids ministry. Like there's so much that goes on Sunday mornings to make it happen. And I'm really proud of the services that we put forward. I think that they reflect well on our desire to want to do the very best we can to present the most important message in the world in a way that takes down as many barriers as possible and clearly presents the good news of Jesus to people. So I just using the flannel graph as a jumping off.
So the
point
flannel
for
graph
that.
thing.
Yeah.
Okay. First of all, you need a sharper knife.
Yeah, I did. That did not.
You did not
I butchered him.
You did not.
But to be fair,
Goliath's head did not come off smoothly.
How smoothly do you think Goliath's head came off in real life? There was probably a little bit of chopping that took place.
That's fair.
So
That's fair.
you got to get through that spinal cord.
The second thing is the flannel graph was a total setup because I had to preach the following Sunday and I had to start with, I don't have a flannel graph for you today. And it's the first and only time I've ever been booed in a sermon.
It's true. You did get booed.
I did.
Wow, that I forgot about that. That was a low light when Kirk was booed going on stage. All right, we're going to finish this up, guys, looking forward. So next time we have a podcast, it will be in 2025. And want to ask you to share one big thing that you're asking the Lord for as we enter into a new year, new beginning. Anyone want to go first? You want to jump in?
This might sound kind of cliche, but here's what I've been asking the Lord for. I've been asking him for, I think the right word is more. Not more busyness, but more fruitfulness in the life of our church. That we would be fully surrendered to what God wants to do in us, so that what God wants to do through us can, to truly be multiplied out. And that's, I think, the core prayer that I keep coming back to.
Daryl?
Yeah, I just feel like Kirk just Darrowed us right there with the prayer for more. My prayers for more as well. More in the sense of, what I'm really praying is that God is stirring in our hearts and leading us to be so passionate and excited about what He's doing in our lives that we can't help but invite others into it as well. So that's really my hope in prayer is that, because I've been thinking a lot about that, of this desire, like even this past weekend, of people inviting others into their home, and it's beautiful and it's great. And I want to see that happen more and more, but it needs to be foundationally rooted in this thing of what we are personally experiencing is so good and so amazing in Christ, that we can't help but invite our friends and our neighbors in to experience that same thing. And that is my prayer.
Okay. Mine is boldness and courage. I have every expectation that 2025 is going to throw a whole lot of curveballs at us. And it's going to be a tricky time in our nation and in our culture. But I've been reading a lot. I've been rooted in my devotions lately in 2 Timothy. And what I am caught by is Paul now is at the end of his life as he's talking to Timothy. He's not sugarcoating the reality of what Timothy's going to face. He talks about it's going to be hard. You're going to face persecution. There's going to be people inside and outside the church that are going to be an issue at times. But man, stand firm. Because there is a world that is in need of the gospel that has been entrusted to you. So take it out and preach it. And I think our world is going to be in desperate need of beacons of hope and courage, of confidence. I go to Peter's epistle where he says, always be ready to give an answer for the hope that is within you. That as things look a little bit dire around us, there is no better time for us to be able to shine with the gospel of Jesus Christ and to offer it out to people. So I'm weirdly excited about 2025, and I'm just hoping and praying that God would give us the courage to walk forward in trust in what he is going to do, and for us to say, to your point, Kirk, to say yes. It takes courage to say yes to God.
Yep.
But that our courage would be placed in the fact we know who he is and we can say yes to him.
Yeah.
Well, it has been a fantastic 2024. We have so much to thank God for. We couldn't even begin to cover it all and get into all the life stories and life transformation. But you heard from both Pastor Daryl and Pastor Kirk. We do really want to see God continue on. We want more of him, and we want more of what he's going to do in our lives, in our church, and in our communities moving forward. So would you join us in praying as we get ready for 2025 that God would help us to step with courage into the more that he wants us to do. Thank you for saying yes to God this year and for all the ways that he's worked because of it, and we can't wait for 2025. See you in the new year, Forward Rewind listeners.